think we might be live. I believe so. So my name is Jason. I'm with Southeastern Reptile Rescue. This is our first live stream. I don't know what I'm doing at all. I work with snakes. I'm not a tech person. All right, so if you're here, this is our first live stream, episode 1 of the SnakesAreUsTV Podcast. We're going to see how this goes. What I thought we could do is if I can get the comments to come up here. And just now, I was going to tell you guys kind of how I got started with Southeastern Reptile Rescue. How this all came about, because it's actually a pretty cool story, to be honest with you. And it's a story I've probably told, I don't even know, many times over the years. So hopefully I don't bore you too much with it. So I got started actually when I was 7 years old. That's when I caught my first snake. And now before that, I had been infatuated with snakes. You know, I was always taught snakes can hurt you, snakes can kill you. When you go outside, watch where you step. When you're picking blackberries, don't be reaching your hands in. Snakes will get you. Well, I'd heard all this stuff, but I never saw any of the snakes. So I didn't really know. I mean, basically, snakes to me at that point, at that young age, it was almost like they were this mystical creature almost. And I was kind of scared of them because I was taught to be scared of them, but I was really fascinated by these animals. And so I remember the first couple snakes I did actually get to see. I was pretty scared, but I was intrigued with them. And so my first snake I ever caught, again, 7 years old, and in the backyard playing around, I lifted this piece of tin on the ground, and there it is, a snake. I had no clue what kind of snake this was. All I knew was I had to have the snake. I grabbed the snake, put it in the barrel, and I tell this story in my shows all the time. And my dad gets home from work. Luckily, the snake didn't bite me because I had no clue what kind of snake this was. He gets home and he's like, that's a garter snake, an eastern garter snake. You know, it's not dangerous, it's not venomous, but you need to go turn it loose, you know. So I'm left in the backyard now. My dreams have just come true. And I picked this snake up, I'm not about to turn it loose, and I go to play with it, and it starts to bite me over and over and over. And I'm like, that's not bad. It doesn't really hurt. And okay, we got a lot of comments. We'll get those. I mean, if you have any questions, post them in here, and we'll try to get some of your questions in just a minute. But I got bit, and I ran into the house. First person I saw was my mom washing dishes. I run up behind her, screaming, both hands are bleeding, still holding the snake. And that's kind of how I got started. And one thing led to another, and I was able eventually to talk my mom and dad into letting me keep a pet snake. And that's kind of how it all got started. So we got a lot of people coming on here. We're going to try to do this, hang on, depending on how this goes tonight. We may do this every week, every Thursday night. So if you guys have questions, let me know. You know, the main reason I want to start this was because when we do these YouTube videos, there's so much footage I have to cut out that you guys never get to see. And, and sometimes I'm trying to remember what the story is so it all makes sense, and I may cut some information out that you're like, oh, well, what about this? So we get, comments that come in on the YouTube channel, and some of them are pretty dumb. So I'm like, why are you asking this? Then I go watch the video, and I'm like, oh, okay, that's why you're asking, because it doesn't make any sense, because I left that part out. So so that's when I caught my first snake. And then, so as time went on, I started, getting snake books. I've got a bunch of snake books stacked up behind me. I've got even more books that won't fit on the shelf. But I started collecting snake books and reading as much as I possibly could about snakes. And several more years went by. I grew up a lot more and got more experience. And then one day, years later, the best idea I've ever had popped into my head, a plan. I had a plan on how to catch more snakes. Not a very good plan. I picked up the phone and dialed 911. The operator said, sir, what's your emergency? I said, ma'am, I don't have one. I'm just calling to introduce myself. My name's Jason. I've been reading a lot about snakes, and you could probably consider me an expert by now. I said, if you have a problem with a snake, you guys call me and I'll handle it for you. She said, sir, we hate snakes. We're going to call you. I did not tell her I was in 7th grade with no car or driver's license, but that's how I got started. And then from there, things started to snowball. And, I can make this story so much more detailed because there's so much that happened. But, luckily my parents, my mom and dad, really supported me in this weird hobby that I had. And as my collection of animals started to grow, I'll never forget where I was. I was driving through a parking lot, and I got a phone call from a lady, and she said, I work for Animal Planet, and I'd like to talk to you about doing like a 1-hour special to show you and your family and to show the world what you do. And there'll be like a whole 1-hour special about you. And I was like, who is this? Is this a prank call? She's like, no, I'm a producer. So anyway, I said, how much is this going to cost me? She said, we'll pay you. I said, well, come on down to Georgia. Let's do it. So they came down, and this was years ago. And they filmed me and my family for 2 days. I eventually took the footage back to Animal Planet, wherever they go. And it's about a month. We didn't hear anything. And they called and said, basically, the president of Animal Planet saw the footage. She said, you and your whole family are crazy. She doesn't want to do the 1-hour special with you guys. She wants to give you a series. So we got sent like a 24-page contract to sign and go through a bunch of stuff. And I eventually signed a contract with them and filmed for the next year and a half all over Georgia for Animal Planet. Did our first TV show. So that was a lot of fun. And, but way before that, I had started getting calls to do snake shows. And my biggest fear in the entire world was getting in front of an audience and speaking. There's nothing worse you could have told me I would have ever had to do with that. I mean, that did not appeal to me at all. Now it's my favorite thing to be on stage and do that. Let's see here. I'm just going through some of these comments on here. Living with Cable, if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, go check out Living with Cable. He actually built our new snake aversion training cages, the cages we put our snakes in for our dog training. He built those, and he can build just about anything. So go check him out. Let's see. Nature Nut, I see you on there. Nadia Brooke, good to see you again. Let's see who else we got. Now, Steve is asking, can a king snake live through a venomous bite from a venomous snake? Yeah, so that's why they're called king snakes. They're the king of the snakes. The thing about king snakes is that, if you take a king snake here in Georgia, pretty much it's immune to the venom of the venomous snakes it lives around. If we take a king snake from some wherever it lives and release it somewhere else around the world or something to a different venomous snake, well, that king snake is not going to be immune necessarily to the venoms of snakes that it doesn't live around. So, they evolve where they live to become immune to the snakes that they live around. But for instance, I believe eastern king snakes that live here in Georgia, I don't think they are immune to the venom of coral snakes. So, your pit vipers, your copperheads, your cottonmouths, your rattlesnakes, it is thought that king snakes do have an immunity to those. So the bandit, Nancy Kozlowski, upstate New York, is on here. You're saying 911 did call you out for snake calls. Yes, I have been answering snake calls for 911 since I was in middle school. But the thing is, when 911 would call me, they didn't know I was a middle schooler. They thought I was an adult. I'm assuming they didn't ask for any credentials. So, somebody would have a snake in their house, a sheriff's department would show up, and the deputy's like, well, I'm not going in there. So they would say, we have a guy we call. So, I remember one time my dad took me to one of these calls, and we pulled up, and me and him get out of the car, and the sheriff's deputy starts talking to my dad, and he's like, no, that's my boy. You need to go talk to him. He's catching the snake. So here's this little teenager walking over ready to catch the snakes for these sheriff's deputies. But yeah, I've done that for many, many, many years. And, but yeah, so anyway, we ended up with a TV show on Animal Planet, and that was a lot of fun doing that. It was a lot of work, and it was, I learned a lot about, producing videos and editing and sound, and I learned a lot from doing that. Then we started getting calls from movies and film and TV shows. And we do a lot of things for movies and film, which is, out of everything I do, is probably my least favorite thing to do, is work on a film set. I've got a list on my website somewhere of all the stuff we've worked on, the Avengers Endgame, Infinity War, Guardians of the Galaxy, Godzilla, lots of TV shows. I'm on a TV show. I appear in a TV show right now Critter Fixers on Disney Plus, Nat Geo. I think I'm on at least one episode on almost every season, maybe. I'm on another TV show right now. If you go to Netflix and click on the TV series called Southern Survival, the episode that's entitled Fear, I'm in that episode there. I'm in at least one movie, which is a funny story. The first movie I got called to work on was a horror movie, and it was Michael Myers. And so I told a friend of mine I was going to go work on this movie. He's like, "You kidding? You're going to get to meet Rob Zombie?" I'm like, who is Rob Zombie? And he was highly offended that I didn't know who Rob Zombie was, but he explained who he was. And I get to set, and I see a guy that looks like the description he gave me of Rob Zombie. So I walk over. I'm like, "Hey, are you Rob Zombie?" He's like, "Yeah." So I talked to him. Super nice guy. I got to meet him, and I said, "So you need me in your movie?" He's like, "No, just your animals." So, but my daughter got to be in the movie. It wasn't even that good of a movie anyway. But my youngest daughter Lily got to be an extra in the background, the Michael Myers movie. The next movie we got called for was a comedy, and I already knew it wasn't going to be in the movie, but I was going to bring a snake that was going to be in the movie. And I meet with this actor. I don't even remember who the actor was that was going to be holding the snake. And I was supposed to get him comfortable with it and show him how to handle it. And I opened the box, and he quit. he just quit. And they're like, "Well, we need somebody to hold the snake." They're like, "Do you want to be in a movie?" I said, "I was born to be in a movie." So they sent me to wardrobe, to this trailer, and they sent me down, and there's other actors getting their makeup done. I recognized some, and sitting to my left was an actor, Jason Sudeikis. He started on Saturday Night Live. And so I got to meet him. And then without even asking me, that morning when I showed up to set, I actually had hair. And without asking me, they shaved my head. But it looked so good. I kept it. But anyway, I got to go be in a scene with a big python with Owen Wilson in the scene. And what movie was it? I don't even want to tell you. It was such a bad movie. But I did get to be in a movie. Let's see what we got else on here. Let's see. A lot of comments. Tell me where you guys are watching from if you're on here. Which part of Georgia are you from? I am from, if you know where Griffin, Georgia is, right in the middle of the state, right in smack dab in the middle, right below Atlanta, above Macon is where we're located. And, so after the TV show, The Animal Planet, after we had done that and we had done movie stuff. Then we started getting calls to do safety stuff on movies, just making sure that none of the actors would get bit by snakes. So that basically we're going to be filming right here. So can you come over here and just make sure there's no snake in that area right there, and we're going to put our actors there. So we started doing a lot of that. And the problem with that is, if I do that, I'm kind of like on set for 12 hours minimum that day. And if I'm on set for 12 hours and snake calls are coming in or this or that, I can't attend to that. So I ended up trying to get people to be snake wranglers for me. We got them licensed with the state, and I would schedule them to become snake wranglers on film sets. And I've kind of drifted away from that a little bit just because I don't enjoy doing it. I mean, it actually pays very well. I just didn't like doing it. So I try to do things that I enjoy doing that actually help snakes. Let's see what else we got on here. We got a lot of people saying hello. Nature Nut is from South Carolina. Where's everybody else from on here? I'm in Barrow County. Elizabeth Weaver's in Barrow County. Do I do any talks up this way? Barrow County, do I do it? So we got Nadia Brooke is from Wakefield, West Yorkshire in the UK. Okay. I do talks all over the place. Barrow County specifically, I don't know. If you want to see where we're going to be, go to SnakesAreUs.com. In the menu, there's a calendar there, schedule of events. See where we're going to be coming up. And I do events all over the country. Mainly, I do stuff here in Georgia. And, for most of you who just watch my YouTube channel, all you guys really see is just what you see on the channel. And you don't really know all the other things that I do. So part of what I do is I train dogs. You may see that if you're on our social media. I don't train them to sit. I don't train them for obedience. We train them to specifically know what a venomous snake smells like and to get away from it so they don't get bit. So we train hundreds of dogs a year. from, I don't know, 10 or 15 different states that come here to Georgia to go through our venomous snake training course. And we've got some really good responses off that. We train dogs for Homeland Security, law enforcement, canines, search and rescue dogs, people's pets, lots and lots of hunting dogs. And, it's been really good. And I enjoy doing that because that's one way to save snakes. If we can get a dog from not getting bit by the snake, well, that saves the dog. And then the owner doesn't come out and kill the snake because it just bit their dog. Speaking of that, we had a call recently, and I hope I'm getting the story right. A man here in Georgia goes into his backyard, and his dog is tied on a runner, and he looks, and his dog is dead, laying on the ground dead. And so he goes to roll the dog over to see why the dog's dead. And as he does, there's a rattlesnake under the dog, and it ends up biting him. So, hang on, let me get this thing turned down. I'm getting some sound feedback here. So it ends up biting him. So he goes to the hospital. Several months go by, and then he goes out in the backyard again, and he's working on his lawnmower. And as he reaches under his mower, he gets bit by another rattlesnake. So now his second bite. So that's not a good thing. So we try to teach people which snakes are which. We teach dogs all snakes and things that look like snakes will kill you. All right, let's see. Dina Williams, what are you saying? If you get a chance to see Jason in one of his shows, thank you very much, Dina. That is very nice of you. He is amazing. I can't see the rest of your comment there. Okay, anyway. So the shows that I do is probably my favorite thing that I do. The first show I ever got called to go do, I started getting calls to go do petting zoos at like a fall festival or things like that. And that's kind of how I got started because I didn't really want to do speaking. And the first time I was asked to really speak was I was in ninth grade, and my science teacher asked if I could bring a snake to class so she could show it and talk about it. I said, sure. So when I get there, she asked me to show the snake and talk about it, which I wasn't too happy about, but at least I got to hold a snake in class. So I did that. And then she, after class, she's like, you did so well. Why don't you skip all your other classes today and come to all my science classes and do the same thing? Well, that was really good and really bad because I got to hang out with my snake all day and didn't go to my other classes. But now I had to talk to people, which I didn't want to do. But I did it. And then the counselor came in and filmed one of them. And then the next morning he had edited this video and then puts it on the TV and shows it to the entire school. So everybody kind of knew I was like the snake guy now, So that was a lot of fun. That was my first time really talking to people about snakes. And then I got more years went by and doing more stuff. And I got a phone call from someone who said, hey, we have a snake show scheduled for this event. We can cancel it, but we don't want to cancel it because the snake guy that was going to come, he can't come. So can you come and do it? I'm like, well, what do I do? They're like, we just bring snakes and talk about them for about an hour. I said, talk about them for an hour? They're like, yeah. I said, I don't know. I guess I can do that. And then when I committed to it, I was like, what did I just do? I just committed to do this. And so I had several months to prepare for it. So I started going to nature centers. Any place that I found was doing some type of a snake talk. And I would sit down to listen to what they were doing so I could figure out what I'm supposed to do. And what I figured out was I didn't like any of these things. Now, I liked snakes, but even I was bored. And most of the people in the audience were not snake people. They were just members of the general public coming to see what this is all about, And the longest snake in the world, the biggest snake in the world. Most of these people already didn't like snakes, didn't even really care about that stuff. So I started listening after going to several of these programs, and people would raise their hands at the end of the show and say, hey, I have a question. And they would ask questions that were relative to them, to where when they saw a snake in their yard, what should they do? And I started listening to all these different questions. And I was like, that's my show. That's what I need to do. So I started doing a show based around the questions the audience asked and things they wanted to know. And I was so afraid that it was just going to be boring, because all the ones I went to were so boring that I would try to think of something to do in each show just to kind of liven it up a little bit. And so it got to where I was like, this is a lot of fun. And I really enjoy doing this. And so the more I started doing it, I started getting more and more calls. People were like, hey, we saw your show. We really like this. We want you to come do this. And then, at the time I had a full-time job. And so I just can't go do all these shows. And so I started doing these shows, and then it got to the point where I'm like, I can't come do this show because I have to work. And they're like, well, what if we pay you to come do the show? And I'm like, well, I do have some sick days, I guess. Yeah. And so it got to the point to where I was taking so many days, sick days, vacation days, leave of absence just without pay to go do all these events. It's like I was almost losing money going to work. And so at the time I was married. I had 2 kids, 2 toddlers. My wife was a stay-at-home mom, and I was a breadwinner. And I decided to quit my job and work with snakes. And so that's what I did. And it was terrifying. It was absolutely terrifying to do that. So that's kind of how I got started. Anybody have any questions in the chat about anything? One thing we're going to do coming up is one of my ideas is to say, hey guys, go watch this previous video that we did. And then if you have any questions about it, put your questions in the chat, and I'm going to go over the backstory of this video and how it came to be. For instance, one video I was thinking about is one of our most popular videos filmed a few years ago, and I don't remember the name of it. I think it's called A Nest of Rattlesnakes in a Family's Backyard. And the way that came about was somebody calls, there's a bunch of rattlesnakes here. We got a whole nest of snakes. And so I go to the house, and I pull up at the house, and he goes, and I peek around the back of the barn, and I'm like, oh man, there is a bunch of little baby rattlesnakes back here. And I'm looking around, and there's a bunch of junk. There's just a bunch of trash and junk and all this stuff laying around. And I want to film it. And I'm like, what if this guy doesn't let me film it because of how bad the yard looks? So I'm trying to think of how to get around this. So I just go over to him, and I said, look, I can remove those snakes, but the problem is it's very dangerous. It's going to be very expensive. He said, how much? I don't remember what I told him, but I gave him a crazy number. And he's like, oh, man, I can't afford that. I said, well, I understand. I tell you what, I'll do it for free if you let me film it. He said, oh, film whatever you want. So that's all I wanted. I didn't want to charge him. I just wanted to film it. And so I decided, I set the camera up, and I'm walking around, I'm catching the snakes first. Then I'm walking around finding the snakes. And if you go back and watch the video, the camera's way back, and it's looking at me walking with shorts through this tall grass. Well, if you're standing in the grass looking down, it's really sparse grass. There's more dirt than there is grass when you're looking down at it. When you're looking at an angle, it looks like thick grass, and I'm just tromping through with rattlesnakes everywhere. So it looks really dangerous, but in reality, I could easily see the ground all the way around me. And then at one point, I'm behind the building, I'm getting out, looking underneath there, and what you can't see on camera is there's a concrete slab, and there's nowhere for a snake to be there. But then there's one place where there's a little hole where the snakes were. But it looks like snakes could be anywhere in this building, and I'm right here just inches from it, could get bit at any second. And it was just not the case. And then, so after I filmed all this, I've caught all the rattlesnakes, and I'm leaving, and I'm thinking, okay, I've got to turn this into a video. So I don't want to just start the video off with picking up rattlesnakes. So what I did is I get back in my van, my snake van, I turn my camera on, and I say, well, just got a call, heading to go see some snakes. He's saying there's rattlesnakes back here. So there's a nest of rattlesnakes. Rattlesnakes don't make a nest. So that's what I said in the video to make an intro. And then I edited that together and showed what we did. Well, then we get all these comments of, well, it looks like you were wrong. You said at the beginning there's no snake nest. I bet you feel like an idiot. I'm like, we're trying to make a story here, So it's so funny sometimes seeing some of the comments that come in. Let's see what we got here. Chris Taylor. Hey, Chris, how are you doing? Paranormal gamer, big fan of yours and love how you educate everyone. Well, that you loving how I educate everyone, that's a very selfish thing for me to do because I like doing it. I do it because I like it, okay? Not necessarily because I want to teach all these people. I do. I want people not to kill snakes. I want them to understand snakes, but I truly enjoy getting on stage in front of an audience and teaching them about snakes and making them laugh and just really having a good time. I tell people, when you imagine you're watching a nature documentary and picture a giraffe prancing across the Serengeti. Can you imagine what music is playing? Okay. Now it's going to change scenes, and it goes from a giraffe to a snake stalking his prey. Can you imagine what music's playing now? So sometimes it's not necessarily as what you're taught, but how you're made to feel. And so when we do our shows, I try to realize that a lot of people there, most of the people there, just the general public, are not there to learn anything about snakes. They're there to see if this idiot on stage gets bit. And so I have to do the show in such a way that it's entertaining, and we put all this education in there, and that way they're willing to listen to what we're doing. And then if we can have fun doing that, if we can laugh, because if you've been to my show, you know, there's several times in the show that I will scare the audience. But one thing I don't do is I don't use a snake to scare the audience. It's always something else. So when I have the snakes out, even though they're venomous, that's the calmest part of the show. So we have a lot of people that, come up after the show and they're like, I came here hating snakes and I watched your show, and I have to tell you, I still hate snakes, but I'm not going to kill the next one I see. And that's all. I'm good with that. You can still hate them as long as you don't feel like they just have to be destroyed. Some people think that they go out and see a snake in their yard, they're almost doing a disservice that they don't kill the snake, And so we're trying to fight against that. So let's see who else we've got here. Elizabeth again saying, I'll try to get to Stone Mountain Festival. That's close enough to me. How will I know when your presentations are? Do they publish? So, okay, she's talking about Stone Mountain Park in Stone Mountain, Georgia. That is the Native American Indian Festival and Powwow. And I am there, I think I'll be there on Halloween this year, a day before and a couple days after. I'm there for a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Thursday and Friday of that event, they have about 6,000 school kids per day come to that to see my show and the other things that are going on. And so each day I'll do 2 shows. The Saturday and Sunday I'm there, I don't do any shows. We just have our reptile exhibit open. If you don't know what a reptile exhibit is, it's a 32-foot trailer. It's a walk-through exhibit. And on the right has native species of the Southeast. On the left has exotic snakes. Let's see what else we've got. Let's see here. Okay, Fred Duvall. Do you still have the timbers that guy handed you like pythons? All right, so that's a question I get all the time. If you don't know what he's talking about, make sure you go watch the video on this channel called How Not to Hold a Rattlesnake. So let me tell you a little bit of the backstory of this. So go watch How Not to Hold a Rattlesnake. So I had somebody call, and like we do all the time, and just want to donate a couple snakes. And I don't remember what happened. I was on the phone or something was happening, and I had to hurry and get off the phone. And he didn't tell me what they were. I don't think I asked him. And so he's driving like an hour away to get to me. And so we ended up meeting in a parking lot. And he told me what kind of vehicle he drove. So I'm pulling in the parking lot and I see his vehicle over there. And he's standing next to his vehicle. I can tell he's holding the 2 snakes he's given me. So I'm not planning on filming this for a YouTube video because I get snakes donated all the time, especially ball pythons. We get so many ball pythons donated. So what I'm assuming it is about the size of a ball python. So as I get closer, I look, and it is 2 timber rattlesnakes. One is draped around his neck. The other one he's holding like a baby. And so I grab my cell phone as quick as I can and try to get the video on and just start filming as I pull up, because I'm just in as much shock, and I'm like, if I don't film this, no one's going to believe this. And so I get out and I start talking to the guy. The first thing I said was, do you need me to identify these for you? Do you know these are rattlesnakes? And he had these snakes for 17 years. He caught the snakes in the wild 17 years ago, 18 years ago, something like that, a long time ago. And he's raised these snakes up. And, if people are willing to tell me what their backstory is, but I don't want to get all nosy with them and say, okay, what's the situation? Tell me why you're getting rid of these snakes. We're just there helping place the snakes. And I figured if he wanted to tell me, he would, but he just said that he had a very rough time right now and it's killing him, and he's got to let these snakes go. And basically at that point in time, there was a plastic storage container that he had the snakes in, and that's what the snakes were living in his truck. So I don't know if he lost where he was living or what happened to him, but the snakes were basically living in a container in his truck. And so we took the snakes. And what I noticed pretty quickly is there were two timber rattlesnakes. One of them was much bigger, probably about this big around, 4 feet long, maybe a little bit bigger, a pretty old snake. And I noticed that the snake seemed to have, I don't know, maybe arthritis. It was very stiff. And I was interested because of how he's holding these snakes. If they were venomoids, you can have the venom gland removed or the venom duct severed so the snake can't produce venom. And we don't do that with any of our snakes, but I know that's a thing you can do. So I'm like, these even have venom. So to test it, when we're feeding one day, I put in a live rat to feed, and some of our snakes only eat live. Most of what we feed eats frozen thawed. But the snakes killed them with venom, and I was like, oh, yeah, they're definitely hot snakes. So we ended up never using these snakes for really anything. We just put them in enclosures and let them live out their life here. And we did keep them for several years, and they ate, and they did fine. The older one had a really hard time getting around. You could tell he was just very stiff in his movements. And so not long ago, both of the snakes have since passed away. So we don't have those anymore. And I think we had that video done. I think I filmed that video a couple of years before we even posted it. But yeah, that was many years ago that we did that. All right, let's see what else we got. So we got fox squirrel from Virginia, and timber rattler in Copperhead country for sure. Living with cable. This is Chris. Let's see. Yeah, Fred, that guy was crazy. I just watched the video again the other day. Yeah. I mean, I understand why you could say he was crazy. That's definitely not something he wanted me to hold the rattlesnakes like he held them, and that was not something that I was at all willing to do. So, Nature Nut, I try to educate anyone that will listen to me. That's really good. And Fred Duvall says, hey, Cable, I don't think he was crazy, but he did know the snakes for many years. Now, one comment, Fred, that's on that video a lot is about how this man had a special relationship with these snakes and how he was like a snake whisperer and all this stuff. I don't think he was crazy, but I don't think he was a snake whisperer. Because even if you look at the snake handling churches, in Appalachian and everywhere they're at, what snakes do they use? They use copperheads and timber rattlesnakes. Mainly, that's mainly what they use. What you don't see them using usually are eastern diamondback rattlesnakes, western diamondback rattlesnakes. And that's because different snakes have different temperaments. I don't ever handle my rattlesnakes and copperheads the way he did in the video. But I feel pretty confident that I could go to almost any one of them I have and pick them up and handle them without getting bit. Would I try it? I wouldn't try it. No, I wouldn't do it because the risk is not worth the reward. There is no reward, But so let's see here. We got, okay, so Chris Taylor, tell how copperhead venom helps. Yeah, I mean, one thing people ask me to identify snakes, they'll say, is this a good snake or a bad snake? Well, to me, they're all good snakes, even the venomous ones. They're my favorite. So the southern copperhead, the copperhead, there's different kinds of copperheads, but the one here is pretty special. There's a scientist out west, Dr. Francis Markland, and he discovered that copperhead has something in its venom called contortristatin. Contortristatin has been shown in lab tests to reduce breast cancer tumors by up to 70%. He then found out he could take contortristatin from the copperhead and then use it in a lab to make something called vicrostatin. And vicrostatin, he found out in lab tests, reduced ovarian cancer by 90% and prostate cancer by 90%. So 3 different cancers that significantly are reduced from proteins and substances isolated in these venoms. And that's just one snake. There's so many snakes out there that they're using for medication. And why don't people know this? Well, because I don't know if y'all know this, but drug companies are in business to make money. And they're not in the business to educate the public or to make snakes look good. And so if they go out and say, hey, we got this new pill and we use snake venom to make it, that may put some people off from wanting to take that pill just because people have this misconception about snakes. So maybe one day we'll have to go over some stuff as far as what does the Bible say about snakes? Because I'm a Christian, okay? I'm a Christian, and I love snakes. And I think a lot of times the Bible is used to justify people's hatred of snakes. When we get right down to it, and we can go in this, on another live feed, one day. We'll make plans to do that, to go over some of that stuff. But I think it's really interesting when you really get down to see what does the Bible really convey about snakes. And I don't think it's what most people think at all. So Nature Nut, and we're going to be wrapping this up here in just a minute because we have a live premiere that's going to take place in just a minute. I want to tell you about that in just a second. So Nature says, have you noticed a large number of copperheads around this year? I had several this year. That's new for me. So that's funny you say that. Every single year, I get a reporter to call me and ask me if I can explain to them why there's such an increase in venomous snakes. Every year it's the same thing. And I don't see an increase in venomous snakes. Here's what I do see. I have people, I'll be pumping gas and somebody will come over, hey, man, there's a lot of copperheads this year. I'm like, yeah. And then I'll be in a grocery store, somebody else comes up and says, man, you know what? I just haven't seen many copperheads this year. So the numbers kind of ebb and flow. And just because you may be seeing more this year, somebody else may be seeing less this year. So I don't think we're having an explosion of a lot of snakes. So we're going to get ready to wrap this up. Before we do that, I want to mention that I set this whole studio up, this mic. This has been a pain in the butt to figure out how to do all this stuff. Never want to do it again. But now that it's set up, I think I can use it to do this. It's not been fun. But so what we're going to do is... Eric Hawkins, how are you? Love your channel and most importantly, your work and info. Well, thank you, Eric. I appreciate that. And Nadia, I see Nadia on here all the time, anytime we do these videos. So this is our first live that we're doing. Hopefully we're going to do these every Thursday at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's the plan. It looks like for 2024, there's going to be 2 Thursdays that I can't do this. So we're going to pre-record some stuff to have up, but what I was saying is that I set all this stuff up, and I set up in here that when I end this live feed, there's supposed to be your YouTube is supposed to direct you to the video premiering. So let me just give you a little bit about this video you're about to see. I've got a lot of videos. Well, I have a lot of calls I go on. Some of them we do have footage of that we can't show because there may be ongoing court cases and things like that. But one thing that I do, a lot of people don't know about, is I used to be a cop. I was a police officer for quite a few years. And because I have law enforcement experience and because I deal with venomous snakes, both native and exotic. I have been working as a contractor for 22 years now to assist the state of Georgia when they have illegal venomous snakes. And before I did this, what do they do with these snakes? Well, they killed them because they didn't have anybody to help them, so they would just kill these snakes. And so I'm happy to be able to do that. And so there's so many calls that I go on, and some of these stories would blow your mind. I can tell you some of them, but some of them I can't. But there's a couple of them that we just filmed, and I don't want to give too much away because we're going to have the videos coming out. But some pretty cool stuff that we just filmed. But we're going to show that. So this video that's coming up, we got a call from somebody who a family member had passed away. This family member lived alone, was never married, never had kids, and had some animals. They had some snakes. And the family member that lived alone, he lived by himself, he passed away. I don't know how long the house had been, I don't know how long he had passed away before anybody found it or knew that there were snakes there. But I was called in to go into the house and remove the snakes. And when we got there were probably more dead snakes than there were live snakes. And the people you'll see in the video are not responsible for this. These are the people, his family members, that had to come in and deal with everything he had left behind. So watch the whole video, and I think it's about a half an hour long. It's hours of footage, and I try so hard to cut this down so I don't put up a long video. But sometimes it's so hard to figure out, well, I don't want to cut this out. I really want them to see this part. But there's so much I cut out of these videos. So we're going to go ahead and get ready to end this here now, and I want you guys to go check this out. The name of this video that's coming up is, I believe it's called Snakes Left for Dead Inside a Hoarder's Home. So we're going to start that video now. So guys, again, thank y'all for joining me on here. This was fun. I will be back again Thursday, 1 week from today, 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern. So if you have questions, save them, come in here in the chat, ask me, and we'll try to answer those for you guys live. Again, guys, thank you for coming. Jesus loves you, and so do I.